Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Tracy Strading, Director of the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Funds at MI-UCP. And I'm very excited today to introduce Jamie Jr. and Kristen Milefchik, who are going to discuss AT for home accessibility. Jamie Jr. is a passionate advocate for disability rights as well as socioeconomic justice. She was born with cerebral palsy and has been navigating life primarily on wheels for the past 8 years and uses her lived experience and skills as a certified ADA coordinator to help others live as independently as possible in the community of their choosing. Kristen Milefchik has spinal muscular atrophy, a lifelong disability, and uses a power wheelchair for mobility. She has a master's degree in social work from Wayne State University and works for Disability Rights Michigan. In her personal time, Kristen also advocates for public transportation and transportation access. Equitable housing and the rights of people with disabilities to live independently in the community rather than nursing homes or medical facilities. So I'm thrilled to be able to introduce to you two experts with lived experience in AT for home accessibility, Kristen and Jamie. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
And give me one moment. I'm going to share my screen. Okay.
Okay. We'll begin with our learning objectives. Also, just one sec. Just really quick, in the spirit of accessibility, I always like to do a visual introduction of myself. So I am a light complected woman. I have long brown locks. I'm wearing large rim glasses that are pink and brown. I have on a black sweater. And my background is a blue wall with like marble wallpaper, which is an artificial background. Unfortunately, it's not my home. So I got that out of the way. Our learning objectives for today. Number one, participants will learn about everyday AT and customizing their space to be functional for their unique circumstances. Number two, participants will learn what to consider when modifying the home and the differences between renting and buying when making modifications. Number three, participants will learn about financial assistance options for AT home modifications. Next slide. Everyday AT. Everyday AT is non-traditional AT or assistive technology to customize your space in a way that meets your specific needs and abilities. Each person's version of accessibility is unique, and that is what works for you. Convenience over convention. Just a quick note about everyday AT. When I use the term everyday AT, I'm talking about organizing your space in the way that works for you, but also considering items that are not traditionally labeled as AT. For instance, a lower. These are examples of my kitchen and how I have utilized everyday AT. So on my far left side, you'll see a table with an oven and a crock pot, and then underneath there are some drawers, and next to it is a shelf. This is my AT for using an oven. Because I use a wheelchair, it's very hard for me to bend down to use a traditional oven and try to lift over my head items that come out of the oven. Is very hot and it's very awkward. With this setup here, which is on the table where the leaf actually comes out, it gives me room to negotiate pulling items out safely, where I don't have a risk of dropping it. The door is not sticking out in front of me, so I'm not having to overextend and kind of move outside of my comfort zone when it comes to my wheelchair. And then the shelf is where I keep my cooking utensils, as opposed to in a cabinet where I don't have to reach over my head. Then at the bottom center, this is next to my stove. This is where I keep all of my spices and utensils in a place that's convenient for me. One thing I would know is sometimes individuals who do not have our unique needs or temporarily able-bodied person, this might look like clutter. But for me, I know where everything is, and it helps me to remain independent and doing something I love, which is cooking for my family. Then on the upper right-hand corner, you'll see that I've set up a coffee station for myself. So you'll see my coffee machine. This is a 1-cup coffee machine. I have a cup that I can handle. It has grips and a top. So I only have to make 1 cup at a time. I have everything right at my disposal. And these are the most important aspects of AT that we can do ourselves. We have to be in charge of making sure that our space is usable for us. Next slide. So home choice considerations. What to consider when deciding on a home that you will rent or lease. The first thing to consider is what modifications can I make as a renter. Typically, as a renter, you can make the modifications that were shown in the photographs. But there are other modifications that can be made as long as you speak to the landlord or the owner of the property. In some cases, they allow you to move doors and replace those doors with curtain rods if it's helpful to you, which goes along with requesting reasonable modifications. One modification that I requested in my home was to change out the refrigerator, because upon moving in, I had a traditional up and down freezer refrigerator, and of course their freezer was too high for me to reach. So I requested a different refrigerator, and they gave me a side-by-side refrigerator that was much easier for me to access, and I could adjust the shelving according to my level of reach. And then are you gonna read this part or me? When considering what to consider when purchasing a home, why get a private inspection? The first reason to get a private inspection, as I learned from my friend Kristen, is that it's much easier to give the private inspector instructions. Have them look for things that can be a specific barrier to you. If you use a wheelchair, you want to make sure that floors are level, that things are not going to be sliding at you. You want to make sure that outlets, that the electrical is good for modification, because you may have to extend something and move an outlet to fit your unique needs. You also want to make sure that the electrical is up to date, because you may have to, you most undoubtedly are going to have to make physical modifications to the home. So making sure that the home is structurally sound and that things can be arranged in a way that will be optimal, that will allow you to use the property in the most optimal manner possible, excuse me, is very important. What hidden or unexpected costs might be involved in renovating a home to be accessible? I think I want to turn that question over to my colleague, Kristen, to answer.
Yes, and I'm also going to do a personal introduction. Again, my name is Kristen Milefchik. I have long brown hair that is pulled back into a ponytail, wearing a green blazer, and I have a dark blue Disability Rights Michigan background. So I purchased a home in 2022, and I have a lot of lessons that I've accumulated over the past couple of years, because it's taken this long for me to make my home what I need it to be fully accessible for me. So as Jamie was talking about with getting a private inspection, you already are going to have to get a public inspection by the city where you're purchasing your home in order to purchase it. But it's also a good idea to have a private inspection because you can talk to the inspector about what you plan your house to be when you move into it. And they can check for specific things, such as if you are planning on modifying a bathroom and you want to widen that bathroom and make it bigger for accessibility purposes, or put in a roll-in shower, that inspector can talk to you about what unexpected costs may come up. For instance, with my home, I did not know until after I started making modifications to widen my bathroom that my electricity in the home that I purchased was outdated. The house was built in the 1950s, and it turned out that all of the electricity was running on one breaker in the house. And because I use a power wheelchair and I will have a patient lift that I'll be using in this house, I work from home and use laptops, and there's a lot of electrical appliances and things that I'll be using that run on electricity. My electricity had to be updated, and it was kind of a domino effect. It ended up that to update the electricity, we also had to tear down the walls of our house because the electric wiring runs in the walls. And once we did that, that added more expenses because I had to have new drywall put up after the electricity was put in and all of that. So a private inspector that knows your specific vision for your home can be really helpful to help you really know what you're getting yourself into if you plan to purchase a home. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about the difference between permanent and temporary home modifications. When you're purchasing a home, you can make more permanent modifications. But here are some questions to consider. Can you achieve the same level of accessibility with temporary or modular AT? So to give an example of that, modular ramps for wheelchair users, those can be broken down and taken with you. There's a modular ramps that are aluminum. There's portable ramps that fold up. And then there's ones that piece together and can be taken apart. So if you're moving into a home that you own, you could have a permanent like wooden ramp built. But it's what's your preference? Do you need something more permanent, or is modular going to work for you? Same with patient lifts. You can get a lift that is actually mounted to the ceiling or to walls, or you can get a more modular type of lift. The one that I'm using in my home, even though I did purchase my home, is a 2-post patient lift. And so it doesn't take up as much space and is not as cumbersome to use as the type that are on the floor that you have to roll and push. But it does the job, it's less expensive, and it required less renovation to my home to use that. Plus, if I ever were to move later on down the road, I could take that lift with me. So those are things to consider when you're purchasing a home, like how permanent of changes do you actually want to make? Also, you want to ask yourself, how long do you actually intend to live at the home you're going to make modifications to? Because if you are in a position where you're not sure if you may have to relocate later on down the line, you may want to consider making less permanent changes and making the sort of modular, using a sort of modular AT or everyday type of AT that Jamie discussed. I know that with the rentals that I've been living in most of my life, I've had to be kind of creative with making my space accessible and functional for me. For instance, one of the things that has come up again and again is that I haven't ever lived in a rental that has a roll-in shower. And so when I was renting, I would have to use bench type shower chairs, or use a rolling commode / shower chair to get in and out of the bathroom and to be able to use the shower. In the home that I purchased, which I plan to stay in, and I don't have any plans to move later on, I went ahead and made the renovations to make a roll-in shower, so that my space could be more accessible for me. And then the last question, obviously, what modifications fit best within your budget? Typically, more permanent changes are going to be more expensive. And there could be financial assistance for those changes if you do decide that you want to purchase a home and make permanent changes. And we'll get into those in more detail later. But obviously, you have to think about, planning your budget and making sure that the upkeep and maintenance of those permanent changes, as well as the initial cost, is something that you will be able to afford. So I'm going to share some pictures with you. This is the home that I bought. And this is shortly after I purchased it, and I actually have the new roof, the Tittle Brothers side is in the yard, because I just had the roof redone there because there was a leak in the ceiling. That was one of the first major renovations I had to do to this house. But I bought this house, and I chose this house because it's all on one floor. There's a lot of bungalow style homes in the Detroit area, and I live in Wayne County, just outside of Detroit. And that had been the kind of house that I had been living in as far as rental housing for years, but I was unable to use the space upstairs, and I wanted a home where I would be able to utilize all of the space. And so this house is all on one floor. It fit my budget, and it was a wonderful feeling when I found out that they accepted my offer on this home, because like many people with disabilities, homeownership seemed almost out of reach for me for so long. But it is possible if you plan right and you know what resources are available to you. So this was a really, really exciting time for me after I bought my home. Okay, and now I got some before and after pictures. So the bathroom, when I first purchased my home, and you'll have to excuse the messiness of these pictures. My house was a rental house before the owner passed away. And so when I bought it, there were still things in the house from the previous renters. And so the kind of messy pictures, but in the bathroom, there was a small sink, a toilet, and a bathtub, one right up against the other. Literally no room on either side of any one of those items. And my wheelchair would have barely been able to fit in there. So despite the house all being on one floor, that was the major thing that I knew I was going to have to change, is widening the bathroom and making it accessible for me. This is the bathroom after, and the construction is still being finished right now. So that's why there's construction dust all over the ground and everything in these pictures, but you can see the sink that was beside the toilet was completely taken out. And now the toilet is next to a roll-in shower. And across from the shower on the other side of the room is an ADA accessible vanity that has knee space so that I can pull up underneath it. And that's the side of the bathroom that was widened and expanded out. And so actually to the right of that vanity is a door that goes to my bedroom. And this is one of those things where it's a little bit different than what people would typically do with a home, because for my purposes, I wanted to be able to go directly from my bedroom into the bathroom because I will have my patient lift that goes over my bed in the bedroom, and that will be able to put me into my shower chair with that lift so that I can go directly from the bed to my shower chair and into the bathroom to take a shower. Now I only have one bathroom, and so there's two entrances to the bathroom, one from the hallway and one from my bedroom. And that would probably not be a thing people would typically do with the house, to have two entrances and only have one bedroom, or I'm sorry, one bathroom in the house. But I need this house to work for me. So, and since I don't plan to sell this house later on down the line, that was an adjustment that worked for me. These walls are waterproof. They're waterproof panels. And so it's kind of it's more of a European thing, but it's like a wet room style. The floors are vinyl tiles, and the walls are completely waterproof, which means that even if the water sprays around, because it's a roll-in shower, it's not going to damage anything in the bathroom. So this will make it really easy for me to get in and out to take my showers. This was the living room before. And this is standing from, the picture is taken by someone standing in the front door. Again, the messiness. It hadn't been cleaned up. But the doorway that you see on the back of the room, that went into a bedroom. And then the other doorway right across from that was the second bedroom. We knocked down the wall between those two bedrooms and made that the master bedroom. Because both of the bedrooms were pretty small to begin with, and I wanted to have more space to be able to move around. And the the bathroom was widened off the right-hand side so that that master bedroom was connected to the bathroom. And this is the kitchen. There was a wall separating the kitchen and the living room initially. And there was not a whole lot of space to maneuver around the kitchen. This is as of last week. And my contractor took these pictures for me. And I'm in the stages where we're just finishing up the house for me to be able to finally move in. But as you can see, looking at the kitchen, we really widened up the space in there. The back door is off the kitchen, and that will be my entrance to the house. And it's a small step up, but I will have a ramp there. And then the wall that what divided the living room and the kitchen was removed, so that now it's all one big weight room, which definitely allows me to maneuver a lot easier. One thing about, a lot of the older houses is that if you really look at the way the houses are designed, many of the walls are not necessary. Obviously you need to have walls around areas that you want privacy. But there was absolutely no purpose to having a wall between the living room and the kitchen, for as far as how I do things. So that really opened up the space in those rooms. And then I have a video on the next slide. It's only about 30 seconds on, But the way we did the floors, which are now done, as of just a couple of days ago, yay, is that we made the same floors through this entire house. So that way, there were no transitions. Transitions are those annoying bumps. For wheelchair users, they're annoying bumps that separate rooms. And I asked that there'd be no transitions in the house because the wheelchairs not only get stuck on those sometimes, but they wear them down over time. And if it's a house that you're going to be living in, and you're going to be running over them over and over again, eventually they bust and you got to replace them, etc. So this is that video. And let me tell you, everybody, I almost cried when I saw this video. I was so happy to have floors in my house again because it's been a long time that we've been working on it. And these are laminate wood floors. Again, carpeting is not the easiest material to get around on for wheelchair users. So and when you're watching this, when they go to the left, that is a bedroom that that I'm going to use as my office. And then the second room was originally 2 bedrooms that is now converted into 1. And that will be my master bedroom. And the paint, obviously not done. That is what the contractor is working on right now, is painting. Okay, so now let's talk about some financial assistance that you can get when you're buying a home. A lot of people, the thing that holds them back from being able to purchase a home is not actually what their mortgage payment would be, but what the down payment is. The down payment for a home is the amount that you have to pay upfront when you're buying a home. And there is a program called from the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, or MISTA, the My Home Loan, that gives $10,000 down payment assistance to eligible home buyers. And this is available to first-time home buyers or ones that have not owned a home in the previous 3 years. So really, that first-time home buying is pretty flexible definition, because if you haven't owned a home in more than 3 years, then you could qualify to get this assistance. And they also have special assistance available to people that are in targeted areas of the state. And this is subject to household income limits and a minimum credit score of 640. That was one thing I had to work on for quite a while, is my credit score. And you also have to complete a home buyer education class. And this is a class that I really feel like anybody that's buying a home for the first time should take anyway, even if you're not getting financial assistance, just because it has a lot of really great tools in it for planning and knowing how to budget and understanding what's involved with buying a home, and kind of those unexpected costs that you may not be thinking about when you're purchasing a home. And there are links here in the PDF so that you can get more information about this program as well. And then there's also financial assistance for making home modifications. Medicaid home and community-based waiver programs. So if you get direct care services or home and community-based services through the state, and you're on a waiver, that could be the My Choice waiver, the HAB waiver, etc. Because those programs are meant to keep people living independently, they do allow you to use some of your funding for making home modifications. So this is a good thing for you to talk to your supports coordinator or case manager about if you have HCBS and you're looking to make modifications. And this doesn't have to be to a home that you own. This could be rent or a home you own. Same goes from the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Fund, which Tracy can actually talk to you more about as well. This loan I used because of all the unexpected costs that came up with renovating my home. I needed some help financially, and I was really excited to learn that the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Fund was a way that they don't have as restrictive rules as a lot of traditional loans from banks do, and they take the special considerations in mind when they're working with somebody that has a disability. And I was able to get a loan to help me cover the cost of materials for my bathroom, for my roll-in shower, for completely redoing the electricity in my home. And there was something else on that list too. But the loan helped me cover a lot of the expenses that were associated with renovating my home. And yes, I do have to pay that back. A loan is something that you pay back, but it's very flexible and low interest. And so I'm not at all worried about being able to pay off that loan. And I'm really, really grateful that it was available to me. Tracy, do you want to share a little bit more about those programs?
Sure. By talking about, as a person with a disability, when I bought my first home as a single person, I did it through a program that you've not mentioned. So I just want to mention it. Through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, there's a rural development. There's a program where outside of strict urban areas, and they have maps, where you can buy a home through that program with not only no down payment, but with subsidized payments. And if you lose part of your income, which happened to me when I owned that home, the U.S. Department of Agriculture can actually increase your subsidy so that it keeps your payment low. So just to let you know, my payment was like $400 a month. Now this was, 2002 when I bought that house. But I just want to let people know that I've known multiple people who've used that program, because you're absolutely right. As a person with a disability, and generally, even when I went back to work off of Social Security, my income was lower than it was on disability because of the tax difference. So I just want to let people know about that program. You can call me for more information about that. And then when we do the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Program, in Kristen's case, just because she's shared this, I'll let you know that it's not that we would give you that loan because it's to purchase assistive technology to redo the electrical in your home. But if the equipment that you're purchasing or putting in, as a part of that, if your floor needs to be, I've had cases where the floor needs to be reinforced for a roll-in shower, as an example. Well, that work or electrical work to run a lift, an electrical appliance, has to be done in order for that to be used, it can be included in the loan. And we do have, it's a wonderful program, and I'm happy to talk to people about it individually as you work yourself for these items, or with people you work with, have them reach out, and we're happy to talk through the options. And I will also tell them about all the places to look for money that they don't have to pay back, because our job isn't to get people into debt. It's to make sure that they have the assistive technology they need. So I'll get off of here and let them go back to their presentation, but I did want to share those two things. Did I miss anything, Kristen, that you wanted me to talk about?
No, I just wanted people to be aware too that the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Fund is just one loan program out of, there's several
Right.
that CP, and that they have different terms and different amounts that they can loan you. And so it's definitely worth checking out on their website. And I linked the Michigan Assistive Technology Loan Fund program in the presentation. But there's other programs on there that you should also check out.
Yep.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention one other thing. The last 2 years, I'm glad to be able to share with you all today, because when you're making modifications to a home that are permanent, it's a huge project. I did not realize when I bought my home what I was getting myself into as far as, you know, that sort of work goes. But some other just guidelines is, if you end up doing major construction changes to a home, it's a great idea to have a general contractor from the beginning that's licensed to oversee any changes that are being made in the home. I kind of piecemealed things together. I had a different company who did stuff with plumbing. I had a different company that did our electrician stuff. I did different company that did our HVAC stuff. And, you know, there's all these permits that have to be pulled and things that have to be done. And when you have a general contractor, they're experienced and they know what permits have to be pulled. They can organize all of the, you know, changes that are being made. And it's a lot easier for them to do it than somebody that is not a licensed contractor or builder. So that's really important, is don't think that you have to run the show and even know really what you're doing. If you're getting major renovations done, leave it to somebody that has that experience. And
Well,
then
I'm sorry, we're going to have a question and answer session, but I do get a lot of questions about how to find a contractor. Kristen, do you have any advice for folks? Because I do to let people know that there's advantage to having a contractor, and how to avoid sort of what to look for in terms of making sure they're not out to steal your funds, right? So I just, if you have any ideas about how to find one, I'd love to hear what they are.
well, and I don't want to say that it's an easy thing to make sure that a contractor is trustworthy, but there are some tools to kind of evaluate that. First of all, Angie's List, and looking at reviews for there's other review sites, making sure that there's a license on file for that contractor, and you know that they have good reviews from customers. But also making sure that when you're working with somebody, when you choose somebody, that you get everything in writing. You should always have a contract that's in writing before the work is started. And that if you're working on a deadline, if you have a certain date that you want things done, that is written into the contract when the work is going to be done. That the expenses are itemized, meaning that they don't say remodel bathroom $10,000. No, You want us to have an itemized list of these, this is what the materials cost. This is what the different materials are and their costs. And this is what the labor costs, and this is the different types of labor that will be done. It should all be there and broken down so you can see what it is you're paying for. And then that way, if something isn't done correctly, you have something in writing to go back and say, this was not completed the way that I asked for it to be completed and the way that you agreed to. So I would definitely recommend looking at Angie's List, or looking at Google reviews and other reviews. Check their Better Business Bureau, make sure that there aren't any complaints for those contractors, because a lot also depends on what's available geographically in your area and the budget that you're working with. So you kind of have to fit all those things together.
Thank you.
So this is the contact information for Jamie and I, our email addresses. If you do want to reach out, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to talk about my experiences and give any recommendations that people might have questions about. And I think
See, we have a
Right.
comment you can do if you, and then if you want to raise your hand as an accommodation or type in a question, or I can unmute you if you'd like to ask your question yourself. So Nan says, make sure your contract includes cleanup. So many contractors don't and leave a mess, loose nails on the ground, etc. So that's a very important point.
It is a very important point, and there's so much that I could talk about that, you know, I knew I was going to inevitably skim over some things, and that was one of the things that I was going to bring up. I have had to get dumpsters, rental dumpsters, which is not something I incorporated into my budget with the renovations, like 5 times to clean up. Because they had different people doing different things, you know, the installation was a mess afterwards. And yeah, it can definitely be an expense, and you should definitely make sure that that's written into the contract that they will clean up after their own messes when they come in.
I want to talk too, I realize we touched on it briefly, but when Jamie talks about rentals and assistive technology and installation in rentals, I just want to talk a little bit about what we look for when we when we work with people who are funding that. And one of the things is, you know, you do have to have permission in writing from the landlord to do renovations. And the other thing that we look for, because there aren't that many places that will assist someone with the funds for renovations to rentals. We do that with all of our loan program. Well, no, with 2 of them, of the loans that we have. And one of the things we look for is to negotiate with the landlord for a longer lease. If you're going to improve the landlord's property for your benefit while you live there, we want the landlord, we like to negotiate with the landlord, for you to negotiate with the landlord a longer lease, so that the result of that is not that you're asked to leave that property so they can raise the rent for someone else. So we work really hard to try to make sure that you are going to get the benefit to enjoy the renovations that you've paid for as a renter, to make that place more accessible for you. So I just want to bring that up too, because we want to make sure that that the work is completed to your satisfaction. We make sure of that. And that you tell us that before we use your funds that you've borrowed to pay that contractor or that whoever does that work, that you're happy with the work, satisfied with it, and that the landlord's going to let you be there long enough to enjoy it. So I wanted to bring that up as well. Any questions from anyone else? If you want to raise your hand, I can unmute you.
Mhm. One thing before we get into questions, when I was talking about, and I apologize for interrupting the program here, but when I was talking about rental modifications, one thing that I neglected to go into detail about is how to request a modification from your landlord. So there are steps. You can do it verbally. It's really it's a best practice. I'm going to use that terminology. It's the best practice to do it in writing. If you do it in writing, then you actually have something to prove the date that you submitted the request. That there are ways to make sure that the request is reasonable. For instance, in my home, when I first moved into my home, I had very light carpet and it had not been changed out. I used a wheelchair for mobility, so a lot of times I bring that outside in, even if I don't want to. So having the carpet changed was something that I wanted. Now I have to do it again, and I want it to be changed to a laminate floor so that it's easier to clean it. But make sure you submit those requests in writing. You can even go so far as to do research on your own to figure out like how much certain things will cost. So that you arm yourself with knowledge, because sometimes landlords will say, oh, that's too expensive for me to do. If you can say, well, this is what I saw, and this is how it can be done. As an ADA coordinator, I've come across situations where people think modifications cost a lot more than they do. So the more you can arm yourself with knowledge about what you're asking for, and make sure you put those requests in writing, and then make sure that you have a schedule to follow up, because sometimes people don't respond to you. So make sure you have a request in place to follow up with them. That's the last thing I had to say. Sorry about interrupting.
You're not interrupting at all. You're the presenter here. I really appreciate that. That's perfect. Any other thoughts?
I would also add that reasonable accommodations aren't just it's something that a landlord could do if they're nice or whatever. It's an actual right. I mean, if this is something that is necessary for your functioning in the home, and it doesn't put some sort of, ridiculous undue burden, on the landlord to make that adjustment, then you have the right to have that changed, because you're paying for that home. You're paying to live in that home. So yeah, there are different laws. ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, is just one of them. There's also the Fair Housing Act. There's several laws that ensure that you have the right to make accommodations to your own home. So keep that in mind as well.
Very important. All right, I don't see any more questions. Any last thoughts from either of you as we wind down? Not interruptions, but last thoughts, Jamie? No?
I want to agree with Kristen about the idea of accommodations being the right. And so the reasonable part is to be determined. That's the other thing that I would mention. You're asking for an accommodation to make your space livable and usable for you. So reasonable is relative, because they may determine, oh, this is not reasonable, but it is for me. If you're a good tenant, you don't cause any problems, you've been living in the home for a while, and you plan to continue to live in the home, don't let them tell you, oh, that's unreasonable. They need to give you an explanation as to why they feel like it's unreasonable. There is specific verbiage and terminology. Kristen mentioned one of them, that it would be an unreasonable financial burden or undue financial burden. Another thing is that it would compromise the integrity of the structure. So there are actual reasons why things are not reasonable for them. And then in some cases, the landlord could come back to you and say, okay, we can do that, but is there a way you can help supplement the cost of that? And again, as Tracy alluded to, if you plan to remain in that home, then yes, and negotiate with the landlord to say, if I help to pay for this, I want to make sure that you're not just gonna make this wonderful modification and then kick me out. Make sure that you negotiate for a longer contract or something that would be complimentary to you doling out your money for that.
Yes, good point. Good point. All right, well, I just want to take a minute. We can continue to visit about this if anybody comes up with a question, but I just want to thank Kristen and Jamie for this great information. This was one of the more fun presentations to do because being feisty and non-compliant is one of my very favorite things. And I love hearing about ways we can be feisty and non-compliant. So thank you both so much for that. I want to invite everyone.
Oh, I'm sorry again. I do see a question.
Okay.
From Danielle Spencer, and I hope I'm not butchering your last name, but Danielle Spencer Delo asked. She says, so my mom lives with me. I definitely need to make some changes for her. Where do I start? So, and I think we both have input into that. I will say one of the first things is you guys have a conversation about what it is that will make things easier for her. Don't just assume, always ask. And the worst thing you can assume is, and it's not done right. The other thing is get a consult. I would recommend getting a consultation from an ADA coordinator. And you can most times do that for free with your local disability network. Most disability networks has an ADA coordinator or somebody that has knowledge of accessibility and how to work that. My contact information is in the presentation. I am a certified ADA coordinator and I have done accessibility reviews for people. So I'm available for that as well. Anyone?
I think too, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, when folks call me with a long list of things that they need, I always encourage them to look through the list at what things should be provided, right? So if they've got a list and it includes, say, a power wheelchair or something like that, I always say, well, Medicare, let's talk about what can be funded by other things and what you would need to pay for. And I go over all of that and then ask people to put them in order of priority, because my priority may be very different than your priority. I may say, oh, the shower is the most important thing for the daily living tasks, right? That means nothing. What's the most important to me is that folks understand what's the most important to them and that they have the priorities, because it's never one thing. Generally, it's not one thing we need, it's multiple things, at least in my life, where I'm going to need to make, different things available. So I think it's important too, to sort of talk through what your mom's priority is, what your priority is, and then have help to make a priority list so that, and then talk about what can be covered by other things, which is all the things probably that Jamie does when she does ADA coordination. But I'd help people through at least that part of the planning of looking at their assistive technology needs. Anyone else have anything? Danielle seems very happy that you pronounced her name correctly, so that's a big win. Anybody else? Okay, I just want to let you know before we sign off today that on August the 8th at 10 a.m. this same time on the second Thursday in August, we're going to do a panel on transition planning, and we always do it before school starts. And I just want to let you know it'll be a panel. It'll probably include the person who's been doing them with us every year for the last several years, Donna Case, but there will be also parent advocate most likely, and maybe a student, I'm not sure yet, but there will be a panel on August 8th at 10 around transition planning, and you're all invited. I just want to let you know to please come to that. And then any other questions, we're happy to hang on for a moment and answer those. And thank you all for coming and attending today.
Yes, thank you. And I will add that even though I've had some discouragement and a lot of delays with getting my home modified, that it still is all worth it. I'm so close to the finish line, and I can't tell you what an amazing feeling it is to be able to say I finally have a home that's mine and customized to exactly my needs. So
That's so lovely.
even if it's a dream, don't give up on it.
Right.
It can be done. Yes, we can reach those dreams. All right, so I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you all. And this, if somebody missed today that you want to see this recording, it'll appear on our YouTube channel at MI-UCP within a week or so. So it'll be available online. All right, thank you both. I very much appreciate you taking the time to present today, and looking forward to seeing you all again in August. Thank you.